The thing about getting older tends to be that, well, everyone else is getting older too. And that leads to some weird side effects. Like, for the 35 years or so that I've been reading comics, most of that has been spent when there's an obituary coming up, reading about an artist or a writer that was before my time. Somebody from the golden age of comics. Somebody whose best work was far behind them by the time I even started reading comics. The kind of people that Mark Evanier would eulogize. And now, here in 2025, unfortunately, we've gotten to the point where now when a comic creator dies, it's someone I recognize. It's someone whose work I read, whose work I may have read for 20 or 30 years, whose table I may have stood in front of at a comic convention, who I may have exchanged emails or phone calls with, any of that kind of thing. They're real people now who are dying, and it's sad. It's scary. It's part of life. I'm going to be 50 next year. Perhaps I should just get used to this now. So word came down that Peter David had died earlier today. It's Sunday night as I'm recording this. It hit. He's a guy who's just always there writing comics at a prolific rate, especially in the 90s into the 2000s. By late 2000s, my reading had mostly moved on to Image Comics and away from Marvel and DC, and then, of course, the Franco-Belgian comics, that kind of stuff. So I didn't follow his career in the latter half or third of it as closely, but for those first 15, 20 years I was reading comics, he was a regular part of my reading stack, and not just in comics, but also online. Pretty sure it was on CompuServe, too, the Comics and Animation Forum back in the day, but definitely on his blog in the early 2000s, and most definitely in the pages of Comics Buyer's Guide, where he had But I Digress, his column that appeared on the back page of the newspaper every week, and who taught me an awful lot about writing and about comics writing in particular and the comic book industry, and was just a hell of an entertaining writer no matter what he was writing about, even when it was just a TV series review or his adventures at a Comic-Con or his adventures overseas when a movie he had written was being produced. When I first started reading comics after that first summer or so, I didn't have a big comic book collection. They were all off the newsstands, but I had enough that I had separated my collection into roughly 3 parts. And the first part was a Spider-Man collection because I started reading Spider-Man. The second part was Ron Lim comics because he was doing Captain America, Silver Surfer at the same time, basically. And I loved his art. And so there was a small stack of his comics there. And then the third stack quickly became Peter David comics, specifically with The Incredible Hulk and Star Trek to start. And from there, we'd move on to, I think Young Justice may have been maybe even the highlight of his career for me. You can't argue with Incredible Hulk. He had the people he had working with him on Incredible Hulk were incredible. But that regular, I forget how long Young Justice lasted, 60, 70 issues, however long it was, with Todd Nauck, month in and month out. I own a small stack of pages of original art from those comics. I've sold a couple now, but I still have a few of those pages I'm not getting rid of. They're awesome. That series was great. And he did a whole bunch of other things. Spider-Man 2099, of course. How could I forget that one? His own Fallen Angel. He did a small run on She-Hulk. He did a little bit of everything. There was a great Starman fill-in issue he did around 1989, 1990. This was the original, or not the original, but the previous Starman series to what James Robinson would later do. He did a one-off that was hilarious. I think Jason Pearson may have actually been the artist on that. If you ever can find that, pick it up. It's great. And of course, it wasn't just comics. He created a TV show with Bill Mumy for Nickelodeon called Space Cases. He wrote for TV series. He wrote for Babylon 5. And he wrote a whole bunch of novels. The Star Trek novels were a big part of my reading as well at that point. In the late 80s, early 90s, I was a big Star Trek fan. Next Generation was still going on. And there were only 2 writers, I thought, who wrote the kind of Star Trek novels I wanted to read. One was Diane Duane, and one was Peter David. And I still have a stack of those books sitting in a box downstairs as I speak. I think in the end, the highest praise I can give his work is just that I've spent a lot of time in recent years pruning my collection back, getting rid of a lot of the long boxes of empty comics I have no interest in ever rereading. And a lot of Peter David's comics have survived those purges. The Star Treks, the Young Justices, the Incredible Hulks, they're all still there in my long boxes behind me. Even though I know I could replace just about all of them, I think, with digital editions of it, I didn't. I wanted to keep the original comics. They're just that cool. And so I'll always have them. I'm sure I'll be, pulling out a couple of those long boxes this week and flipping through and reading a few great comics from most likely the 90s, let's be honest. But I'm making this video today to include something I did back in 2006. Back during the initial run of the Pipeline Comics podcast, I interviewed a few creators, and one of them was Peter David, who couldn't have been friendlier, who couldn't have been nicer, who couldn't have been more gracious dealing with me in my early comics podcasting / interviewing days. There's a reason why I didn't do too many interviews, as you'll probably hear when you hear this podcast. Hopefully I'll be able to tweak the audio a little bit, because he was at one sound level, I was at a different one. It's a little back and forth with loudness. We have better audio leveling tools today than we had back then. But it's unlike probably every other interview you may have ever listened to with Peter David, because we shared one thing in common, and that was a love of bowling. I've been bowling since the earliest age I could join the town league, up until I basically bowled every year of my life until 2008 or so. My winter league closed. The bowling alley we had our league in was shutting down. I was about to have, my first child with my wife, and I decided I would take a year off, and here we are 15 years later. I'm trying to get back into it now. It's been slow going getting back into it, but I'm going to hit a league one of these years, I promise. But Peter David was also a big bowler. He lived out in Long Island, a huge bowling community, even to this day, not as big as it was 20 or 40 years ago. But if you go to Google Maps sometime and type in bowling alley and take a look at all the red dots that show up, there's a bunch of bowling alleys in that little stretch of land known as Long Island. It's pretty impressive. And Peter David, back in 2006, had blogged about how he had lost a bunch of weight, and he thanked bowling for a large part of that. So I had to ask him about that, and it turned into a much longer conversation about bowling. We had a half-hour interview, and I don't think we got to any sort of comics for the first 20 minutes at all, because we were too busy talking about bowling. In remembrance of one of the great comics bowlers of our time, Peter David, I represent this podcast for you now. Peter David was trending on Twitter today. And granted, trending on Twitter these days doesn't mean the same amount as it used to, a few years ago, but it's still pretty impressive when a comic creator hits that level of interest, because everybody loved some aspect of Peter David's work. Mostly, yes, it's the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man 29 I've seen a lot of. Less, but I've seen a lot of the Star Trek stuff as well. I'm in there with all of you. I send my wishes and my condolences along with everyone else in the comics community. But I can add this one little side note that's a little bit different from everyone else, so I wanted to throw it in there. This is my conversation with Peter David from 2006. We began our discussion, though, last week talking about bowling. The last time I was in a room with Peter David, we were both sitting on the comics blogging panel at the San Diego Comic-Con. And while he was there, he showed me a ring that he was wearing. And so I asked him to start this interview what that ring was all about.
That's an 800 series ring.
Wow.
It's what you get when you bowl 3 games in league situations that total over 800. In my case, I shot a 265, a 267, and a 270.
Youch.
That was about a year and a half ago.
Okay, and that just goes to show you, as much as fanboys remember graphic details, bowling people remember details as well like that.
Well, if I'd shot a lot of 800 series, I'm sure that they would blur together. In this case, though, I've only done it once in my life. On the other hand, an 800 series is something that is only accomplished by 1% of all regular bowlers in the country.
Youch.
So, the specifics of the numbers tend to sear themselves into your mind. I mean, during that particular series, from the second game into the third game, I shot 18 strikes in a row.
Wow.
It was incredible. It was like I could sneeze at the pins and they would all fall over. It was just a really good night. My poor opponent looked like he'd been hit repeatedly in the face with a 2x4 because you have to understand, going into that evening, I had an average of about 162,
Wow.
which doesn't exactly strike fear into the hearts of other bowlers. So the concept that this 162 bowler was going to go out there and shoot an 800 series really didn't factor in. So the poor guy just had a really bad night.
Not only did you roll over him, you shot the Varipapa 300.
Yeah, exactly right. I actually carried a 300 into the last game, all the way into the top of the 10th frame, and then I just totally choked. I literally couldn't let go of the ball, and my arm just went right across my body, and I left the 124. So I blew the 300 game, and then my second ball was actually perfectly placed, but I just got some bad luck, and I kicked the 2-pin right around the 4.
Oh.
As a result, I also lost the clean 30, which
yeah.
which is basically 30 frames without an open. But I got the 800 series, so something was salvaged.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
I've hit 600 a few times, but nowhere near 700 even at this point.
Yeah. I'd had a 600 series at that point. I had never had a 700 series, and I jumped straight to 800. I have shot a 700 series since.
Wow.
But the concept I was going straight up into 800 just kind of floored a lot of people.
Still haven't hit the 300 yet, huh?
No, not yet. I've had the front 9 on 3 different occasions, but have yet to have any luck on the first ball of the 10th frame. I mean, the first time I did it, as I said, I just totally choked. The second 2 times I shot perfectly good balls, but each time just left the 7-pin.
It's always the one that gets away. It's kind of like poker when everyone has their bad beat stories, and bowling, everyone has that one shot that you pulled up on too quickly or something.
Well, yeah, particularly if you're left-handed. The
Okay.
7-pin is the one you're going to leave, and it's but the problem is that you can just put an absolutely perfect shot right in the pocket, and if the pin still ricochets around the 7, you're pretty much screwed.
So do the lefties have an unfair advantage since there's not that many of them burning up the oil?
A lot of people have that theory, and I even ran it past Johnny Petraglia, who's one of the best-known lefties in the history of the game.
Oh, yeah.
And his contention was that that's absolutely nonsensical because if that was the case, then lefties would dominate the PBA, and they really don't.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, although there are some people who say that lefties have an advantage because the oil is not going to break down as quickly.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this is what really got into my mind to talk to you tonight, was you mentioned bowling in your blog recently, peterdavid.net, for those who want to play along at home, and you credit that as part of your weight loss regimen. You've been losing a lot of weight lately, basically, and congratulations on that.
Well, thanks.
But so how much do you attribute that to bowling? Because some people don't necessarily think of bowling as being an athletic endeavor at all.
Well, yeah, and that's because these are people who haven't really done it. I mean, there are these people who are under the impression that bowling requires no effort whatsoever. You get up there and you throw the ball, and that's all that's required. These are people who don't understand about reading the lane, about the oil breaking down, about using different balls for different situations. When I go bowling for exercise, I don't do. People think that you get up, you bowl a couple of balls, and you sit down, you drink a beer, that kind of thing. When I'm bowling for exercise, I get up there and I shoot 3 or 4 games within a 45-minute period.
Wow.
If you don't think that's going to work up a sweat, you go try it.
No, I do. I know the feeling well.
Yeah, and the only draw. I mean, the thing is, it's good cardio.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that it's caused uneven development of my muscles. My right arm, which is just my normal right arm, has pretty normal musculature. My left arm, the muscles are hard as rock. It's like Popeye. So it's really like the arms of 2 different people. So a couple months ago, I joined a gym and have started with a weight training program, so that lifting weights. I mean, so that I can even out the development of my arms and have them be, have it feel like they're both belong to the same person.
I guess that means you fall on the side that bowling is a sport.
Well, sure it is. I mean, you look at guys in the PBA. These are guys who, in competition, can bowl up to 15 games in one day.
Yeah.
It just requires a great deal of physical stamina and a great deal of mental focus. It is only considered to be an easy game by people who don't really do it.
And those who use the bumpers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'd be really neat if I started using the bumpers. Although the bumpers really aren't that much of a factor for a regular bowler because you just simply don't drop the ball in the gutter all that much.
Except for the
you
10
do
pin.
sometimes. I mean, sometimes the balls slip off your hand and bang you into the gutter. But throwing the ball into the gutter isn't really that much of a major consideration for someone who bowls on any kind of a regular basis. If you can't keep the damn ball on the lane,
You're not going to maintain your average.
There's something seriously wrong.
Yeah. So what's your average up to these days?
My average, I'm in several different leagues. My average hovers anywhere at this point from about a 190 to a 200.
Wow. So you've come a long way since the 162 days.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just mostly...
Pretty much, and the weight loss has also helped because it's made my knees far more flexible and enables me to get closer down to the lane. I've dropped 60 pounds so far, really doing something very, very radical, which is eating less and exercising. I know it's wild. I know it's just totally nuts, but that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, the exercising part when you're bowling, to me, I can deal with that. It's that whole eating less thing that I kind of get screwed on. But
well, but it's first off, I cut out soda, which was major, and then I also cut out pretty much all desserts.
Okay.
And just the crap snacks and all that kind of thing. So that alone, it can be responsible for a great deal of weight loss. And then it's just a matter of portion control. I mean, the concept is that you can really eat anything. You really can. You just can't eat everything. The thing about weight loss is the first thing you have to realize is that diets are ridiculous. The whole problem with diets is that they have an end. And if you're going to keep the weight loss, then you have to realize that there is no end.
Right.
That you simply have to change the way that you're living and the way that you're eating and the way that you are conducting yourself. And I just made the resolution that I'm just going to eat differently. I'm not cutting out all carbohydrates. I'm not cutting out all fats. I'm not doing any of these drastic things that invariably lead to weight gain once you end the diet. Because the human body isn't really constructed to eliminate all of everything, all of anything.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of realizing that you just can't eat everything that you want to. Can you indulge yourself every once in a while and have something that you really shouldn't, like a dessert? Sure. You just can't do it every day.
I did a similar thing at the beginning of the year. I decided I need to lose a few pounds, so I just cut French fries out, which goes against my Belgian blood. But
right.
I did that. I lost like 10 pounds in the first month and a half, and while I do eat French fries again, I limit it to like once a week, and I've kept that weight off ever since. So it's a lifestyle choice. It always is.
French fries are my one indulgence, and even then, I will not eat the entirety of a portion.
Good move.
I mean, if we get French fries from McDonald's, if we get food from McDonald's, I'm no longer eating a Big Mac and an entire order of fries. I'm eating a grilled chicken sandwich and like half the order, or 30 or 40% of it. That kind of thing.
Life without the great biggie size. It's a different world out there. A couple other bowling questions for you.
Okay.
What kind of ball do you throw? I mean, do you have like one of the big hooks, or you just throw it straight up the side, or?
I'm generally what's called a stroker.
Okay.
Which is, I have, I do my release, and the two types of bowlers you see, if you break them down, there's the strokers and they're the crankers. The crankers are the ones who kind of rev up their arms and let go with these incredibly hellacious hooks. The upside of which is that if you're on your game and the ball's going right, you can just annihilate the pins frame after frame and just string strikes together. The problem is that if you're off by a hair, you can wind up leaving the most hellacious splits. You can leave a lot of them. I am basically a stroker, which is that I shoot with a moderate hook. Generally, I just try and place the ball over the second arrow and hope that it will hook into the pocket. Yeah. But I don't. you'll generally find that you can actually get better results with a slower ball than a really, really fast ball. Because if you roll a slower ball, which is what I do, it allows for more pin action. When you throw the really fast and hard balls, it blows the pins into the pit, which is great if they all go down. But you can wind up blasting the pins right past the back fins and easily leave an 8 or a 9 or a 7 or a 10. Yeah. The thing to remember is that there's absolutely no rush in getting to the line. What's happened, you don't really need to have a stride when you're approaching the foul line that's substantially different than your normal walking stride.
Where did you learn how to bowl from? Did you have any coaching or just from watching other people or the PBA?
I had a combination of things. I bought about every book there is on bowling, so I learned a lot of book theory.
Right.
And watching the PBA every Sunday. There's the bowling competition on the PBA, and there's also and now they have ESPN Classic. They have bowling every day at noon.
Yep.
Bowling in pro-ams, the pros were very helpful in giving advice as to how to fix the game. And eventually, I had I got some coaching to really help with some of the fundamentals and the mechanics.
Then I have to reestablish my comics credibility with the next question. But
okay.
Which comic book character do you think would be the best bowler?
Which comic book character would be the best bowler?
I mean, would Reed Richards' limp arm, stretch out all the way? Or God, I'm really geeking out now.
Depends if you're going to cheat or not. I mean, Reed could technically, finish with his feet at the foul line and have the ball about an inch or two from the, from the pins. Thor, if he threw his hammer, could probably take out the rack pretty easily.
Okay, let's assume not cheating.
I would, for some reason, presuming that they could get a ball that would fit his hands, I feel like the Thing would probably be a really good bowler. I don't know why.
He's got that old school Brooklyn thing going. He probably grew
He's
up
got the old school. He's got the old school Brooklyn thing going, and I could just really easily see the Thing doing a hell of a good job.
And
I don't know why, but like I said, they have to get a ball. Yeah, Hulk versus my wife suggests Hulk versus Thing in bowling. Hulk smash puny pins,
You could pitch that to Marvel next week.
Yeah, that's really going to work.
Why don't we see more comic book characters bowling, for goodness sake?
I don't know.
So
I've done a couple of stories where they were playing baseball, but we've never actually have they ever actually done bowling stories?
I can't think of one. I mean, the X-Men obviously have the baseball tradition, and there's been some basketball even in X-Men, but I can't think of too many even, background settings being in bowling alleys, let alone stories.
I'll tell you what. I'll do it in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Perfect.
Flash Thompson and Betty go. Flash Thompson and Betty go bowling.
Perfect. Well, you expect of all the manga that's been translated over here. They're translating the basketball books, and I know there's a ping pong book, and I know they have other ones over there. They've got to have a bowling manga somewhere.
One would certainly think.
Yeah.
And naturally would involve schoolgirls.
You
have to have, the schoolgirls are bowling, and the little skirts are flying up as they bowl, and there'll be a young horny boy who's the pin jockey, who just keeps looking longingly from the back as he's watching these attractive schoolgirls bowl, and then there's the one that he particularly likes. So every time she leaves any pins, he kind of like quickly reaches down and knocks them over. My God, this actually would work, wouldn't it?
It would be a specialty item. You'd have to get it into the whatever the direct market in bowling alleys is exactly.
Yeah, you actually could do that. I mean, stand behind the girl at the foul line and kind of teach her the basics of a pendulum swing. Generally, I found a couple of things. The place to start, number one, is teach them a measured approach. Because 90% of what's going to happen on the lane is determined by how you finish at the foul line. Okay. That's the first thing. If you finish off balance at the foul line, forget it. The other very simple thing to teach people, and something that many don't understand, is what to look at when you're releasing the ball. A lot of people think that you're supposed to aim at the pins.
Right.
Except you're not. You're supposed to aim at the arrows that are on the boards. And people don't realize that. I mean, there was one woman who I was bowling with who was just having an absolutely miserable time, and I said to her, "What are you aiming at?" And she says, "I'm aiming at the head pin." And I said, "No." And I said, "Look at that arrow there." And I pointed out the arrow to her, and I said, "Throw the ball so that it rolls over that arrow." And she did that and immediately struck. I mean, she didn't then roll nothing but strikes, but
Yeah.
she got a strike on that first shot. And I said, "See, there it is."
Yeah.
You know, so that those would be the places that I would start. I'd start with the approach, and I would start with, you know, emphasizing what people should be looking at. After that, I would move to the basics of the pendulum swing.
Mm-hmm. So you're bowling in 3 different leagues right now.
Yes.
You said you have a small child at home. Where do you get the time?
Oh, well, first off, sometimes she goes bowling, too. I mean,
Okay.
not at the league.
Yeah.
Basically, Monday nights, both my wife and I bowl in leagues.
Okay.
And Ariel watches her little sister.
Oh, okay.
And the other 2 leagues I shoot in are both Wednesday nights, so I essentially do 2 leagues back to back.
Oh, wow. That's got to be tiring.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's 6 games, but considering that I can bowl for practice, 4 to 5 games inside of an hour.
Okay.
I mean, usually my practice sessions are 45 minutes, and I shoot around 3 to 4 games. But sometimes if I'm feeling spry, I'll do 5 games in an hour.
Okay.
So doing 6 games over a period of 4 hours is really not that big a deal.
And you watch all the TV shows, too, that you write about on your blog.
Yeah.
Are you watching those at 2 in the morning or something?
Well, let's see. Well, for instance, when I'm watching Hero and Studio 60, I watch those when I come home Monday nights from, I get home about 11 o'clock from my league on Monday.
Okay.
And I usually watch Hero and Studio 60 at that point. And of course, I can buzz through those in 44 minutes because I just shoot right past the commercials. And Wednesday nights, I generally will watch 30 Rock and Lost at that point. The rest of the stuff I can watch when it's on.
So is it a TiVo or a DVR from the cable company?
Actually, it's not from the cable company.
Okay.
It's a recordable DVD player, DVD and VCR.
Oh, okay.
Which is nice because I can transfer back and forth.
Oh, wow, that is handy. So we've got the TV shows, we've got the bowling, and then somewhere along the line you have to be writing. So let's go.
I do manage to squeeze that in every now and then.
Well, I know you type fast.
Yeah,
You've
that helps.
mentioned that before.
I type about 120 words a minute.
Ouch. What comic books are you writing right about now? What series are you on? I know X Factor to start.
X Factor, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Fallen Angel.
And you have
Soul Searchers and Company. I think we have one more issue to go.
Okay. And
I've got various limited series,
Okay.
Wonder Man and 1602. I've got to write the last issue of 1602. Better, because issue 2 is just hit the stand, so it really would be nice to actually write the 5th part. Also, I'm doing the adaptation of Stephen King's Dark Tower books.
Oh, that's right.
February, I think it ships February 7th.
Oh, excellent. So that'll be in the next previews then. In a couple of weeks, we'll probably start hearing about that one.
Probably so.
And any novels being worked on right now?
Yeah, a bunch. Let's see. I'm working right now on a Fantastic Four novel.
Oh, okay. Is that
an original novel that'll be out next year?
Okay.
I wrote the novelization for Spider-Man 3.
Okay.
I am going straight from the Fantastic Four novel into a new Star Trek: The Next Generation novel. I haven't done a Next Gen in quite some time. Also coming out in spring of next year is the first book of a new series called The Hidden Earth, which is being published by Tor. And I've also just sold a concept for a young adult novel to HarperCollins.
Wow.
Which will be coming out 2008, I think.
So you are busy.
You could say.
So what can you tell me about the Tor book that's coming out in the spring? Is it too soon to talk about that one yet, or?
Well, no, it's not. It's not too soon. Essentially, it takes place on an Earth of the future in which it turns out that not only are mythological beings do they really exist, but they've essentially overrun the world, hunted much of humanity into extinction, and are now in the process of being at war with each other.
Oh, cool.
I thought so.
I like the sound of that one. and that one's due out sometime in the spring.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four book, is that for the movies, or is that based on the comic book continuity kind of thing?
No, it's based on the comic book
Okay.
characters, obviously,
Yeah,
but it's not tying in with the movie.
Okay.
It's an original FF novel. It'll be coming out in 2007.
Okay, and you also had it came out about a month or two ago, I guess now, the book on comic book writing. And I just blanked on the title, and I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately.
Writing for Comics with Peter David, a title that I absolutely hate, but that's what the publishers wanted to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to have it be, a focus on the art of writing comic books and just have, say, by Peter David, like a normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, the publisher apparently felt that my name on it was a major selling point. So the one advantage of this is that my name is finally big enough on a cover to keep my father happy.
Congratulations. You are the Stephen King of your time again.
I try.
At long last. And one last question for you, because I was reading the writing book not that long ago, and you mentioned early on in it that that you still read the occasional books about writing and the various, Writer's Digest books or books where authors discuss their process. Can you recommend one, or is there one that maybe a recent book that you've learned something from, or one that you like? That
I haven't read any very recently. Okay. Probably, if you want a good book on what it's like writing scripts and dealing with Hollywood, I would probably recommend William Goldman's Adventures in the Screen Trade,
heard of that
which
one.
Can be a real eye opener. Also, I still have a fondness for Stephen King's Danse Macabre.
Okay. His on writing book is really good. I know a lot of people have recommended.
I've heard that. I have not yet picked that up, but I'm going to be I am going to be doing giving that a read.
Yeah, it's definitely a good book.
That's probably the next book that I'm going to be reading on the subject of writing.
Oh, I stumbled into that one then. Okay, I think I've run down my list of bullet points for you. Is there anything that you wanted to pimp while I have you here?
IDW is not only collecting the second volume of Fallen Angel, issues 7 to 12, which will be coming out next year. Mm-hmm. Early next year, but DC is finally getting around to begin collecting the rest of the DC run.
Oh wow!
So there's going to be two. It's going to cause no end of havoc for Amazon, I would guess, as two books, each called Fallen Angel Volume 2, coming out from two different publishers with two entirely different content.
Yeah, I think the
We'll be hitting the stores both around January of next year.
I just, now that you've mentioned that, I remember seeing that in the DC listings for January 2007, exactly. And X Factor Volume 2 hardcover, I believe, is also out in January. So,
oh, is it?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think I saw that in the Marvel listings also, because I just read the hardcover of the first volume last week, and I really liked it.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
so
you.
I'm looking forward to the second one. And I just, I know this kind of goes against some of the theory, but if they came out a little bit sooner, I could sneak onto the monthly book then, because the first volume was so good, I wanted to pick up number 7 right away. And what issue? I don't know. They're past issue 7. I know that much. I forget which issue just came out.
See, if I had my druthers, they'd actually come out further.
Right. I remember hearing you talk about that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like if they came out with hardcovers and then the paperback came out 3 to 4 months later, who'd buy the hardcover? So my attitude is, if people believe that, here's the thing: movie producers are all decrying because people aren't going to the movie theaters as much as they used to. But in the meantime, they're putting out the DVDs within 3 to 4 months after the film is within the theaters.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, if there was a movie that was in the theaters and you wanted to see that movie and you didn't see it in the movie theater, the next time you were going to see that film, the next chance you would have would be a year or maybe 2 years later when it showed up on television broken up by commercials. Mm-hmm. So you made a huge effort to see a movie in the theater if it was of any interest to you. Nowadays, anybody who sees a movie that's advertised but they can't get out to it, they kind of shrug and go, oh, well, I'll get it when it's on DVD in a couple of months. Yeah. Right? And lo and behold, business goes down in the movies because, people figure, why should they rush? Now, if the producers all got together and said, no, we're not going to put films out on DVD until a year after, then maybe people would make more of an effort to get to the theater if it was of interest to them. Yeah. Same thing with comics. The trade paperbacks come out 2, 3 months, 4 months at most, after the things come out. right? If people knew that they had to wait a year to 2 years before a trade paperback would come out, they would make more of an effort, I think, to read the book on a monthly basis. But instead, the books come out as close as they do, and so people figure, well, you know what? If I don't pick it up, it'll be out in trade paperback in a few months, so why should I bother?
Yeah.
And as a result, just as movie sales go down, comic book sales go down. Go figure.